welcome you all to the first ever HCA Masterclass, where we will be bringing you game-changing conversations with the best of the best. Today, we have a true icon with us, someone who has dominated at every level of the game. She's been a force on the court, a championship-winning coach, and now she's leading one of the most dominant franchises in women's sports today. Please welcome President of the Las Vegas Aces, Nikki Fargas. Nikki, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited.
Stephanie, I am too. I am looking forward to this conversation because it definitely is important to me, and just want to share what I can regarding my story, but some hopeful, valuable nuggets that people can take away from this meeting.
Yeah, I love it. And we're just going to dive right in because I know everybody has a million places to be. Let's start with the formative years, right? We're really big about the sports made me mentality. And I think the deeper I get in my career, the more I realize that sports truly has made me. So let's talk about young Nikki. What do you think growing up developed you into the competitor and leader you are today?
Well, I grew up in a small town, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and not a lot of people know where that is. So I'm just going to give you a little historical context. My town is the home of the atomic bomb. We have 3 nuclear plants in my hometown. So if I was to dim the light a little bit, I might glow, but that's okay. No, but I think growing up in a small town, it taught me about community, and it taught me that, one way, and there was 2 ways that I knew I could get out of and be more exposed to things, was through academics, and then obviously through that little round basketball. And growing up with my relatives, I grew up with cousins, and a lot of the boys in my neighborhood. We always would gravitate together. We would always get together, and from riding my bike, I was competing, because I was a tomboy. To when we would go to Linden Elementary School, and I first started playing basketball, and I was at the elementary school, and we were playing on 6-foot rims, and I was fairly tall as a little kid, 10, 11 years old, and I would never get picked. I'm just like, well, I'm out here too with the guys. And Stephanie, I would never get picked. I'm just like, but I'm just as good as they are. So until it was my turn to run a game, I would be on the side basket, just shooting, working on my ball handling, and just trying to get better. And so when I finally would get my run, our team would stay on the court, and we would pretty much beat everybody. And that's how I kind of learned that's where I got my street cred. And I think my confidence started to build slowly but surely, because I didn't take no for an answer. I didn't look at, okay, they didn't pick me. You're not the brightest person in that I know. That's okay. But I'm about winning. And I didn't care if it was against the boys, if against girls. I was just going to compete and give it my best. So I learned that at a very, very young age. And fast forward, I now get to do the picking. And so to all those boys who did not pick me to run pickup over at Linden Elementary School, look what that has done for me. And I do appreciate that. I know that sounds crazy to say that I appreciate the challenges of growing up during a time where girls weren't valued. Girls weren't looked upon as the same way as boys. But it just taught us a different level of perseverance. It taught us a different way of going about our day-to-day without allowing somebody else's view or somebody else's belief to dictate what your future is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I could draw so many amazing parallels from the story. Just the fact that when you weren't getting picked, you were still working on your craft just instills so much grit, because I'm sure there's been times across your career where you haven't been picked, but you know how to operate in that space. You keep working, you keep getting better, and you keep, digging in. And I think everybody who's been a female athlete has related to the playing against the boys and having to fight for that spot. I watch my daughter do it, who's 11 now, almost 12 this week, but I watch her do it. She plays with the boys, and I kind of love it. There's something about women's sports. That grit is just amazing. So fast forward, how did you actually end up at Tennessee? Because then you went on to be a basketball star at Tennessee. So walk us through how you got there. Obviously, you got to play for the amazing Pat Summitt. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I remember growing up in the Boys and Girls Club, and I I would play in a co-ed league. And that then sparked me playing in junior high, go to high school. And my high school basketball team, actually our athletic department was really good in a lot of the sports. I played in high school, I played volleyball, I ran track, and I did basketball. And we were able to capture a state championship in track and in basketball. But once I saw that basketball was going to be my vehicle as far as getting an education paid for, I then had to ball and I stopped running track and I just started to focus my junior and senior year on basketball. Lucky for me, a lady by the name of Pat Head Summit saw something in me and offered me a scholarship. And so as I was looking at where I was going to attend, I had offers all across the country. And I just said, wow, I know that I always said I wanted to get away. I wanted to, go explore and get out of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So I ended up going 20 minutes away from my hometown. But Knoxville and the Lady Vols had won national championships in 1987 and 1989. So I'm dating myself right now. I literally love competition. I truly believe that iron sharpens iron, and you can't be afraid to go somewhere that is already established. There's different reasons why you attend a university to win championships. Obviously, I was going to get a great education. You may go to a school because they have a major that you want to go into. You may go to an institution because they're leading the league in attendance or where they're located. I chose a school that gave me all of those things. It checked so many of the things that I was looking for as far as my collegiate experience. And when I went to school, or when I was in school at the University of Tennessee, we had two separate athletic departments. So there was a men's athletic department and a women's athletic department. And I was just in awe of the fact that, yes, I have this great role model in Pat Head Summit, who has shaped so many of our lives. There's 161 of us who have played for her. But I was also I was so impressed that our athletic director, Joan Cronin, female, all the women that I saw in leadership roles were female. Our strength and conditioning coach, our head athletic trainer, female. Our sports information director, a female. Our academic affairs person, a female. And so it was girl power in the 90s, early 90s. And so when I decided and made that decision, I also was able to take a lot of that with me. I understood that we have to carve out our space in the world of sports. And we also have to be great stewards for those who are going to come behind us, but then also finding those allies, finding those who are going to support what we're trying to do and kind of even the playing field a little bit. So I just think my experience at Tennessee was just so I can't even, sometimes I get choked up because I can't even express what Pat Summit has meant to my life. I wish he was here today to see what she has instilled in so many of us. When you attend the University of Tennessee and you play for Pat Summit, there is a code of conduct. There's a, I'm going to say your values, or what do you live by? What do you believe in? And we had the definite dozen, and there were 12 simple principles. And for those of you guys who have not read Pat Summit's books or who are not familiar with the definite dozen, I would highly, highly recommend you do so, because I still carry those principles with me today. I've carried them in my professional career, not only as the president of the ACEs, but also in my coaching career. And those principles are transferable to any company, and they're transferable to any relationship as well. When you talk about respect and honesty and make hard work your passion, and you have to have great leaders and eager followers, and change is a must. I can reference those things today. And again, I played in the early 90s, 1990 to 94. And to draw on those 30 plus years later, it worked. It definitely worked.
Yeah, and sports is so amazing because it's one of the few ways, especially for women, that you're just prepared so much better for life afterwards because you're in this snow globe where everybody has an opinion about what you're doing. There's a scoreboard, you know if you're winning or losing, you know what you have to adjust. You're getting coached constantly. The refinement that happens, like you said, that iron sharpens iron, there's few things that I can think of that give you that same experience as sports do. So that's why I just love it. As my career's progressed, the more and the deeper I get in my career, the more I realize sports made me, and it is foundational for so much success. So I love that. Just really quick, favorite lesson, if you had to pick one from your time with Pat?
Favorite lesson. I would say one of my favorite lessons is seeing Pat Summitt outside of her role as the head coach, but seeing her as the mom of Tyler Summitt. When I was a freshman, Pat had Tyler, and so I got to see him, grow up. I got to see him just as a baby to who he is today, and that you didn't see that often. You didn't see a woman being able to be a movement for not just women's basketball, but for sports, while also being this community leader, and also being a wife and a mother. And so I appreciate that, when it was time for me to start my family, it's okay. It's okay. And you can do all of it. I remember a story. I remember going to see Tyler play soccer with Pat and another coach. And so Tyler team, we're standing along the sidelines of the soccer field, and I wasn't that familiar with soccer. I knew, hey, you got to kick it and get it into the goal line, right? I knew that. And so we're standing there, and soccer is not as fast paced as or it's fast paced because you're running back and forth. Maybe it doesn't change direction like in basketball, turnover, offense, defense. Like you can have the ball for a little bit longer in soccer. I just remember the soccer balls being kicked back and forth, and there was a timeout. And Pat literally went over and grabbed Tyler out of the huddle. And she's like, Tyler, I thought I taught you better. You got to hustle. You got to get up and down the field. You need to make sure that you are out there representing, us in a way that I sit here and talk about how I want my players to play. And the coach comes over and, hey, Coach Summitt, is everything okay? And Coach Summitt is like, yeah, everything's fine. But Tyler, he's just being lazy. He's not getting up and down the field at all. And the coach looks at Coach Summitt and he says, well, Pat, he's the goalie. So the intensity, again, I love seeing her as a mom, and I love being able to talk about, Tyler and what have you, but that intensity did not stop. She was intense, whether she was coaching you, but there was no place for laziness. There was no place for not working hard. And once she realized that Tyler was the goalie, she then told the coach, well, he needs to play a different position.
That is hilarious. And I love that the stories you remember are her being a mom, because I think, today we see a lot more of that, right? Where, women are working, mothers, all the things, but back then that was really, really rare. So what a special thing that you got to see as a leader. So let's chat a little bit about your time at Tennessee. How'd you pick your major? What'd you think you wanted to be? And obviously you became a super successful coach. Take us through that journey. How did you get there?
Well, I always thought that I was going to be an art teacher. I literally, when I was in junior high, I was able to take a trip overseas, and I got to study foreign art, and I thought I was going to be an art teacher. And then I get to college, And before went to college, I was part of this engineering program, and it exposed a lot of us to that field. And so I said, well, maybe I'll go into architectural engineering. And Tennessee has a good engineering program. So I get there, and I'm, freshman year, you're kind of taking just, the basic courses, right? And not really diving into your field of study. And at that time I hadn't declared either. And one of the things that we did at Tennessee was Pat was so ahead of the game when it comes to mental wellness, when it comes to personality profiles. So we hired a company that came in, and again, this is in the early 90s, and my personality really did not fit me just sitting behind a desk 9 to 5 and not having interaction with people. I am what you call a high A, high B personality. I have the gift of gab. So I literally decided that I'm going to go into mass communications and be a journalism PR major, because I had a really strong emphasis in writing, and I love storytelling. I remember one of my projects in college was and I actually wrote a book entitled "The Day in the Life of a Professional Football Player." Because at the time I was dating a football player. He was pretty good. We're not together now, but I remember just wanting to be able to share the story, and so some of my, again, I wanted to go be an artist. And so I did the illustration as well, along with writing the book. The personality profile is what really changed my trajectory and what I was going to major in. And I did not look back. I go, wow, this fits me. This fits who I am as the person. So I would say to everyone, yes, there's going to be jobs you need to take to gain experience. There's going to be jobs that you take because they're the only job that's available right now. But if you can get to that place where you find your career, where you find the expectations and the job responsibilities that match the core of who you are and what makes you happy, what makes you excited to get up every morning and go to work, what makes you excited to stay later and make sure a project is done. And so what happens is work now becomes your lifestyle. And if you can transition, well, I work here. No, this is part of my life. This is part of my journey. When you're able to change and shift that language, and because you've shifted into the field that he wanted you to be in because of the tools and talents that he's given you, that's when you know that you're in a great place.
Yeah, and I love that. I think so many times social media has taken the journey and the work out of life, right? Like there's so many things. I mean, you switched from an art major early on, thinking you wanted to be an art teacher, to engineering, to comms, and then becoming a coach. So you went through a lot of things to figure out what you wanted to do. And now you're in business, and we'll get there. But I think, just that message of it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. That's totally fine. And you got to do a lot of things to figure it out, right? Like, and so I think that's just
I think it's absolutely okay. You're not even going to know who you are. You really don't really know. I figured who I was like late in my 20s. I used to work before I got into coaching. I worked at a mortgage company after college. I didn't go right into this. I was literally working at a mortgage company, and I remember when the show Friends came out. And me and a bunch of my buddies on Thursday nights, we would watch Friends. And that was good for me in my early 20s, right out of college. Then I started dabbling in the broadcast world, like doing some women's college basketball games. But at the time, women's college basketball wasn't even being covered. I was with Fox Sports South, and we would do one game a week, one SEC game a week. I worked for Shop at Home. I worked like 3 nights out of the week. And I know a lot of people on here probably don't remember, but I literally sold Beanie Babies on Shop at Home. I was on a sports memorabilia segment that was an hour long. And so I got to learn about other sports that I had no idea, it was autographed memorabilia. So you can get an autographed baseball, a bat, hockey. I just really just kind of took things, and all of these experiences helped me to where I am today, to be honest. And so it is okay not to know exactly what you want to do. But I would say while you're trying to figure it out, just make sure you're around good people. Just make sure you're around people who have your best interest at heart, who will also be a great person on your resume, someone who can potentially be a way to open the door for you while you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, a couple takeaways just from that segment. And thank you for sharing all those. I didn't even know about all those jobs you had. And if we had enough time, we could dissect all the learnings through each of them. But I think a couple things that I hear is like, one, you have to do something. Nowhere in this story where you were like, I was sitting on my couch just trying to figure it out and hoping it hit me in the face, right? Nobody gets off the bus for the Super Bowl and is like, I'm here. I'm the kicker. Haven't been any practices, no games, but I'm here, right? So I think the doing something is so, so important. And then what you said about being around good people, I remember someone had told me at one point, you need to find people who are walking at your running pace. And if you're not around those people, you're not going to be getting better, and you're not going to be achieving the things that you are destined to achieve and are capable of achieving. So I love that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, how did you get into coaching? So you had all these jobs in the interim, and then you land into coaching, obviously super successful. Talk us through that transition.
So I think I was a pretty good student of the game. Like, the game came easy to me, understanding the X's and O's, understanding how to break down scouting report, retaining that information, and then how to go in every day and practice at that elite level. And so when I graduated, coach and one of our assistant coaches, Mickey DeMoss at the time, she goes, I think you'll be a great assistant coach, or get into basketball and be a good coach. And I said, no, absolutely not, because you guys have no life. And so, I kind of fought it, right? I knew that, they believed that I could be a coach. I just wanted to have a life. And I didn't think that I could, because all I saw was them like first thing in the morning till wee hours of night, and the travel and all these other things. And I was like, no, I want to enjoy life. And so as I was doing my broadcasting with Fox Sports South, I was going to practices, I was going to shoot arounds, and I was doing my scouting reports. I was interviewing the players and the coaches. And then I would talk about it, and I would say what I saw and the schemes. And I would be over there saying, well, I would do this. I would do all of those things. And then I just felt there was something about just being in the arenas, being at the games, being at the practices on these other teams, that I was like, I need to do more. I can give more of myself than sitting over here commentating, about the game. I need to be more hands-on. So I remember calling Coach Summit and just talking about, again, I think you need to have a board of directors. I think everyone should find professionals who are successful, and those who also have maybe had challenges and then have learned how to pick themselves up. And this is what we do now. I had a board of directors, and as I moved through my life, I wanted to have a Pat Summit on my board. I had an attorney, I had a realtor, people who were successful in their respective professions, because I needed to lean in on them. I needed to be able to pick the phone up and call them and say, hey, I'm going through these things. What do you think? Hey, I have this on my plate. How do I handle it? So that was important for me to have that. So I remember calling Pat, and I'm in my mid-20s. And she said, Nikki, she goes, I think you'll be a great coach. I said, well, do you have anything available? And at the time, she says, I have a director of basketball ops, and I have a grad assistant position. She had no coaching positions available. And so I said to her, I said, which one is going to fast track me and allow me to be part of the basketball? I want to be on the court. I want to be a sponge. I want to learn. I want to, recruiting, scouting, budget, managing a team. She said the grad assistant position. Now, the director of basketball ops position is a salary position, full-time, benefits, and better pay. I then took the route of being a grad student, and my stipend, obviously grad school was paid for, so I'm not complaining, but my stipend a month was like $650. That's what my stipend was. And luckily I had, been able to save, money and put myself, and basically I had to, put myself back through grad school because the $650 stipend wasn't going to cut it. But what I learned as a grad assistant was there was no job too big or too small for me to do. I was a former player at the University of Tennessee. I had won a national championship. I had, individual accolades, come from a very high profile program. But I started at the bottom. When you think about, the pecking order, there's your head coach, there's your assistant coach, there's player development, there's this coach, and then there's your GA. So I got every, little job task that you can think of that you might now, like, people like, you really did that? I go, yes, I did. And again, it wasn't like I was 18, 19. I was like 20, 26, 27 years old. And I thought I was an adult, right, at that age. Something as simple as, hey, we got a television, Nikki. I go, okay, well, we need you guys to go pick it up. And me and Christy Wilson, she was a volunteer assistant. And we're like, oh, yeah, that's fine. We'll go grab it. She goes, no, the TV's in Atlanta. And I go, okay, so we're in Knoxville and we can't get a television for the locker room in Knoxville. We have to go all the way to Atlanta. And that's like a 3.5 hour drive. I remember and we had to rent a Ryder truck. And I remember we rented a Ryder truck, drove it to Atlanta, and me and Christy picked up this television that was being donated to the Lady Vols. And we drove the Ryder truck back. Again, no job too big or too small. Now, here I am, had played for the university in this Ryder truck. So I do believe that by taking that path, I got to know the names of the folks who managed the facility, from when you walked into the building, who was the cleaning people, who were the maintenance folks, who was working in the cafe. It just gave me a different appreciation for the fact that Tennessee was what it is, and had all of this notoriety, but we didn't know the people who were really the engine that made this go. And I still can go back to Tennessee, and there's certain, areas of the building that I'd be like on a football weekend, hey, such and such, let's meet over here. And it would be the maintenance people. I think it just opened like I said, it opened my eyes up that there are important people here that may not have the big sexy title, but they're equally important as the person who has the title of a president or who has the title of a head coach. That was a valuable lesson that I learned. From there, I literally was in grad school for 1 year. And then Debbie Ryan, the head coach at the University of Virginia, had reached out to Coach Summit saying, look, I'm looking for an assistant coach. Well, there you go. My name was thrown in the conversation, and Debbie Ryan remembered me because she actually recruited me as well to come play at the University.
You told her no? She's like, you're not telling me no twice.
I know, I'm not telling her no twice, right? And I actually took an official visit to Virginia, and I really loved my visit there. And so years later, now I'm going to UVA, second, and I should go back. I don't think I will, but I didn't go back and finish my master's, but that's okay. The experience that I had with Debbie Ryan for 3 years was just unbelievable. And then 3 years later, Coach Summit has an assistant coaching position available. And so I got the phone call from Coach Summit, and I immediately said yes. And so I was the recruiting coordinator there from up until 2008, 2002 to 2008. And, we signed a pretty decent player by the name of Candace Parker. And so we were able to put, Tennessee back on the map and winning some more championships. We won 2 back-to-back in 07 and 08. I never thought that I wanted to leave Tennessee. I mean, my family's there. I'm from there. But I was just like, what's next for me? And um, and that's when I got my first head coaching job at UCLA.
Yeah, I love that. And there's some key things as you're talking about these stories, right? The power of a network. So you talked about your board of directors, and I think athletes, we are really good at the long game, right? These long goals, we know if we want to make more shots, we get in the gym more, we'll shoot more, and over time, it'll go up. But sometimes I think it's hard for us as athletes to see that like these deposits we're putting in our networking and
Mhm.
building relationships is going to pay off years later, right? Like Pat didn't call you when you were 23 and just graduated. She called you 4 or 5 years later. And so I think the power of networking and your network being your net worth at the end of the day, like speaks so many volumes. And I want to touch on one other thing. You know, we talk a lot about the lost years, and every athlete I talk with says, I thought I was the only one that had an identity crisis after I graduated, didn't know what I was going to do, and all of that kind of stuff. And that's really a big part of these master classes is this see her, be her. Like you had 4 or 5 years of probably, I'll ask you, did you think it was the lost years, right? Trying to figure out who you are, what you wanted to be, all of that kind of stuff. Like that's normal. It's going to happen to every single athlete. So talk to us a little bit about those feelings of lost years, just so we can tie a little bit of that together as well.
Yeah, I think here's the other thing, right? As an athlete, you've been told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, all of those things, and why you do it. And that structure and that discipline is so important to the growth of who you are as an individual. Then it becomes, oh wow, I'm done. There's no 6 a.m. workouts. There's no meeting the team and getting on the bus and going here and having that net, that there's a safety net there too. And so you are kind of lost a little bit because you don't have that same regiment, that same expectations of carrying and I say carrying the weight, because when you play at Tennessee, the weight is to win championships and you better not disappoint, right? So you carry all that. And then now you're just like, oh gosh, where did that go? I don't have that expectation. I don't have those things. I can now eat what I want to eat. I can stay up late. You almost, take that time to again self-reflect, but understand, give yourself some grace. No, 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 as long as you keep moving, and moving forward in areas that you may not even thought could help you later. You just got to keep going. But during that time, enjoy it. I'm telling you, I brought up the story about working at Vanderbilt Mortgage Company. It was one of the best times of my lives because there wasn't all this pressure of performing in front of 14, 15,000 people or having to come in and you're every week you're getting you're being on the scale to see what your weight is, or you've got to get up 2,000 shots. And it's just that it's a period in your life where you're just transitioning. And that's what I looked at it as. It was a period where I was transitioning into truly, truly what adulthood is. Because when you get out in the real world and now there's no training table
Yeah.
or your housing isn't taken care of, you have to be responsible for that. And so
Yeah.
I do believe that through those years after college, they're lost because you're not doing what you've been doing up until you were graduating. You had to put that time in at some people like 8 years old. I mean, I started playing organized basketball when I was 6. I graduated. And so you're looking at, what is 6 years old till, 12 years I was in up until I got to college and another. So 16 years, I was just boom, boom, boom. All throughout the summers, it was constant. Basketball was year round. And then now you're just like, oh, so this is what it means to have a summer off. Oh,
Yeah.
this is what it means to be home for Christmas and Thanksgiving. You just got to give yourself a little bit of that grace period, but don't give yourself a long time, because
Because one of the things you talked about earlier was you have to do something, right? And even that breath that you got to take, still, you were still doing something in those moments. I love what you said about transitioning too. And I think, in the media, we all hear the stat 94% of C-suite women played competitive sports, over half at the collegiate level. 93% of women making over 100 grand a year or more played competitive sports, over half at the collegiate level. So there's something to this demographic. There was actually an academic study that was done by a bunch of Ivy League universities, and they looked at athletes and non-athletes. A question was asked to them, like, why do we even have athletics? We're an academic institution. And they essentially proved out that in peak salaries, cumulative salaries, peak titles, and cumulative titles, athletes actually outperformed non-athletes, but it took them 5 years to figure it out. So like, all your story lines up so well. We didn't even plan this. I didn't know her timeline prior to this, but your story does line up pretty well with that 5 years of like figuring it out, taking that breath, transitioning, the last year. So that's pretty cool. We could literally talk for hours about your collegiate coaching success and experience, but I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about your transition into the business side of things. Yes. Because I think so many athletes or anyone transitioning from one part of their identity to another, whatever that may be, there's so much doubt that happens. There's so much, uncertainty, but you took a leap. Talk to us about it, walk us through those feelings, and even, how you've had so much success today.
Oh, wow. So, I did take this leap of leaving college coaching to then move.
I forgot to mention, as one of the top 5 highest paid women's basketball coaches at the time. So like, not just, you didn't just leave coaching as like, oh, I was all right. Like, you were a big freaking deal in the coaching space. Sorry, continue.
All right.
I had to drop that mic for you because you were really good.
You put my financial business out there.
Sorry. Google told me.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, I think, when I shift from being this basketball coach to coming to being the president of the Aces, I had a coach's mindset, right? I mean, as a coach, one of the things that you're trying to do is you're trying to develop your players, and you're studying the game, and you're thinking about the team dynamics. And I think when I moved over to this role, I want to maximize the effort of and the performance of the people around me. It's no different than you want to maximize the effort and the performance of your student athlete. So I think what I try to do was, like, student athlete, I changed that word out and said employee. Or when you're trying to, manage your coaching staff, right? That's managing your executive team. When I'm trying to ensure team success on the basketball court, I'm trying to ensure team success in the boardroom. So I think you can take the basketball side and kind of make some adjustments, because even as a head coach, I still had to understand the financials. I had to understand the operation. You had to be strategic about how do you run a team, no differently than how do I run a franchise. And I literally am just coaching in a different way. I mean, I still have that intensity in me, even in some of our meetings when folks aren't something as simple as, I need people to be involved in the community outreach part of this organization. And I will keep track of those who are giving their time and talent to the community. But when I think about leading beyond the basketball, I want to make sure that I lead in a way where people would like to follow me. And so I tell people all the time, when I got here with the Las Vegas Aces, I had a staff of 7. And since then, with outsourcing and with also in-season employees, we have over 100 employees now. So we've literally grown this from one interview to one hire at a time. And I understood the vision of my owner and Mark Davis. I knew exactly what he wanted to do, besides win world championships, which thank you, Becky Hammond and Asia Wilson and Jackie Young. He wanted to leave and make his mark in the WNBA because at the time when he purchased the team in 2021, we were going into our 25th anniversary of the existence of the WNBA. And so it was important for us to level up. So one of the things that he invested in was this 40 million practice facility, which is our ACES headquarters, which staffed the basketball and the business operations. And so I wanted to basically merge both operations, right? I wanted to merge basketball with business. And that's easily done. And it's easily done because you know what we do? We communicate with one another. Departments should have opportunities to collaborate with other departments and bring in the basketball side. So if partnership is looking to find a partner in the medical profession, right? In the medical field. Well, why not talk to our lead medical director, who probably has relationships and a Rolodex of contacts that we can go through? Or if ticketing and sales is like, you know what, I really, want to give them a boost. Becky Hammond, could you come down here and just talk to our ticketing and sales team and tell them, one, how great they are, because we've now sold out 2 consecutive seasons. That just her taking the time, it just motivates you in a different way. So it's no different than, remember in college when you would bring back like an iconic former player to come and talk to you? It's the same thing. I'm bringing Becky Hammond to go talk to our ticketing and sales team.
Yeah.
And so I used my coaching experience and how I coached and how I lead. I do that now. In your locker, you think about it. You got your locker and you got your name and your number. Well, all that does is tell me where your locker is, right? In our office on the business ops side, I've got your name and your title outside your door. It only tells me where your office is located. And so it allows us to have a culture that's very cohesive, a culture that no one is above anybody else. And I know people are like, well, I'm looking for the title, and title comes, they will come, but don't go seeking them. Let your job, let the work that you do speak for itself, and then that will come. It's when, and I know we need to talk some other things, but it's like when I look at a lot of resumes, or I'm interviewing people, I'm looking at about who they are as the person first and foremost. But one of the things that just kind of, gets underneath my skin is if I have an employee come in and saying, well, I think I should do this. I think I should be named this. I think. And I'm just like, that is so not the right way to go. And that's just with me sharing some of my experiences in building a franchise and hiring all these people, is let the company come in and you show them exactly what you're worth and what you can give, and then you will get that starting role, right? It's kind of like you come in as a freshman, I got to fight for everything, and then I now became a starter, or I became a captain. But that's kind of, you got to go through the process, but you don't go to your teammates and say, vote me as the captain, or, hey, I'm going to be the starter. It's no difference when running this company. It is no different. So I try to, stay in direct alignment with how I led as a head coach, and now how I'm leading in this position as the president.
Yeah, I love that. We're going to dissect some of that. If you guys have questions, put them in the Q&A box and we'll ask them as well. I think there's a Q&A box on your Zoom bar. So if you have any, throw them in there and we'll get to those. But I want to dissect just a couple things that you talked about. I mean, when I think about transferable skills, like you're studying the competition and determining plays as a coach, you're doing that, with the aces. You're leading as a coach, you're leading very similarly as the aces. Like there's so many transferable skills and we could spend hours dissecting all of them, but I want to spend a little bit of time. You talked about resumes, you talked about what you're looking for. Let's double click into some of that. When you're hiring, what are you looking for on a resume, and what do you think actually differentiates someone and makes them truly an impact player as they're someone who works for your organization?
I think when I'm looking at a resume, it first off, it's got to be, I think it's got to be aligned with our culture and our values and what we need to operate. I would say those are, those are the three nuggets, right? The culture, our values, and then our operational needs. In looking at the resume, the things that stand out to me is, well, first off, I need your resume to be very simple and easy to follow, but informative. And I say that because if you start just loading your resume because you just want to talk about all the things that, like if your job, if my experience was, I had experience here and I list like 20 things under there, you're going to lose me. Like, I just need your high level bullet points.
Don't waste the bullets. Use
Don't
them.
waste the bullets,
Yes.
and make sure each bullet counts.
Yes.
And when you're putting those bullets in, also think about, okay, what is the next person's bullet points? What makes me the better candidate than him? What can I put, or her? What can I put on my resume that maybe nobody else can? So I love to see the experience. I love to see, because it's got to be direct experience in the field that you are applying for. And then I think you also have to have some level of success. I mean, you got to show that you've been successful. So if I'm looking at somebody in partnerships and you were with, let's say, a Legends or somebody like that, go ahead and put the amount, the whatever data you want to add, because two things, I always say, don't lie: film and data, or film and statistics. So go ahead and add those in there, because one of the things that we're going to look at is like bottom line numbers, because I've got to manage a budget here. So if you were overseeing a $2 million budget and you generated, X amount of, dollars in revenue, add that on there. I also like to see if this person is adaptable. So having a variety of experiences on your resume is not a bad thing. What's bad is if you are jumping every 6 months, and that tells me, well, this person, where's the loyalty? Why did you have, 5 jobs in 1 year or something like that? So I think that's something that I definitely look at. And then I think the other thing is, make sure that your resume also lists your skill set. So if you're familiar with a lot of different softwares, then put them on there. I think now technology is changing the game. Add that in your resume. But your resume, once you get to me in this whole interviewing process, your resume, I have a lot of executives and they're hiring within their departments, but I'm just wanting to know more about who you are as the person. Because, the qualifications and your expertise, those all should be checked off. I mean, I shouldn't have to, like, I just hired a whole new medical team. Now, the equipment that they use, I mean, I've been in hot tubs, cold tubs, but all the other stuff that they use, I mean, that's them. I don't need to know that. I just need to know, one, because that should already be a check mark. I just need to know, what's your level of professionalism? Do you understand, that you're an extension of this organization and here are your job duties and responsibilities? Those things, I get that part of reading the room and reading the individual. But those are the things that jump out in the resume. The other thing that jumps out in the resume too is, I mean, to your point, we were talking about networking. I mean, be able to put some high profile people or affiliations to whatever institution on your resume. So, like, for instance, if someone was applying for a job here and I saw that they worked at another or with another professional team of any sort, it doesn't have to be the WNBA. I may look at that resume because they've been in this field, or if they worked at a university, because they've been part of this. So I think that's important too, to have a strong list of references as well. I think
Yeah,
that's
I love that. I love what you said early on. You were like, show your resume, your whole goal is really what you said earlier. You have to show a company that you've been successful and can make them more successful because they
yes.
have, right? So I love that. We have a bunch of Q&As coming, questions coming in the Q&A chat. So if you have others, definitely type them in. The first one says, what's your why and what motivates you? And how has this changed throughout your career?
Oh, wow. So my why started at a very young age. As I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a little small town, but my why was because I knew that my mom, being from a single family, my mom it literally, it was me, my mom, and my younger sister. And, you know, my grandparents worked at the plant, my mom worked at the plant, my grandfather worked at the plant. And so my why was, I want to be successful in life. I want to financially be able to support my mom and my sister, whatever that is. I definitely knew that through sports, and if I could be really good at it, I could potentially, you know, go and play professionally. And so my why initially was that. Then, you know, sports happen, you get to college and there's a ton of injuries. You know, I've had 2 foot surgeries. I've had a heart surgery. I had all this in college. And so in 3 of my 4 years, I had surgery. So my why still was, I still want to be in a position to support my family. And that's always been my why. I wanted to go, I also wanted to break I wouldn't even call it a curse, but there's barriers that were in place for, like, my grandmother. She could only get an 8th grade education. And so, you know, we understood that growing up. My mom was only able to go to a historically Black college. Then my sister and I, our generation, we were able to go to a historically white institution. So I think we understood that we needed to end that cycle of not having the level of education that we should. So literally, I'm one generation away where now I can attend any institution and go and play anywhere. So my why also was, there was a responsibility that I had for the Black community. I needed to make it. I needed to make sure that once I was in a position that I could literally reach back and pull people along and pay it forward. That was extremely important to me and helped me with my why. Now, as I got older, and now that I have my own family, my why is still supporting my family. I have a 12-year-old daughter going on 30. Oh my gosh.
So cute.
And so that's been my why. So I feel like I've been placed in this position to hopefully eradicate some of the barriers that are in place for women, for people of color, while also making sure that my family and the next generation is in a better position than I was when I was either my daughter's age. Um, my why has stayed constant because I also live in a place of appreciation. I think there's 2 places you live: entitlement and appreciation. So when you're trying to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to do in life, first off, get up that morning and say, "Oh my goodness, I'm thankful that I woke up this morning." So when you start living in a place of gratitude, a place of humbleness, and if you don't know your why, it'll start to become clearer to you. It'll start to reveal itself to you because you are giving yourself, even when you don't know what to give, you just know, let me be kind, let me be honest, let me be a good person. Those things matter and they will help shape, again, your why it's just ever flowing, but staying true to who you are. Now, if your why is for materialistic things, I don't know how long that's going to last. I think you got to be and find what your purpose is. Be in a, you know, I know purpose-driven life. I mean, I read that book. I think we've all read that book, but that is a strong, strong book to read. I think that's where you can say, okay, I may not know exactly what I'm supposed to do, but again, I say this and I believe this with conviction, do something, give of your time, give of yourself, because that's the greatest gift that you can give anybody is your time.
I love that. I literally got the chills as you're talking because your why, although it may have changed slightly across your entire life, it was always about giving back to those less fortunate, or doing something bigger than yourself. And I think if we really, you know, when we get a year into these master classes, every successful person, their why will be wrapped around something bigger than themselves. And I think there's so much power in that. And I love that you said you have to do something. Nobody shows up to the Super Bowl if they haven't done anything. Another question just came in. How do you balance your network while also maintaining meaningful connections with the people you've already met? So how do you grow your network, but also maintain what you've currently got, because both have a place?
I think, you know, my network, it's grown because I love people. I mean, you can build your network. You can be at Starbucks and talk to the person behind you, and you will find that, wow, this is an interesting person. And then you exchange numbers, and you got to be intentional now. This is the other key of the follow-up. And,
Yes.
and I think that's where we might meet somebody and then we're like, oh yeah, I remember when I met them, but you didn't follow up. You
Yeah.
never know who you're going to meet. When I'm on the airplane, the person next to me, I tell them, like, look, if you're going to go to sleep, let me know, because I'll sit here and talk to you the whole flight. But power of communication. Do not ever underestimate how that can open up doors for you or for people to remember you. So I was at a high school, Meadows High School, just a couple of weeks ago, and the individuals who put on the program, two of them came over and they spoke, you know, spoke to myself and another staff member, and you know, they took the initiative. Well, fast forward, right now, as of this whole week, we're doing with Meadow School, but the two young ladies that came over, they're actually doing job shadowing right now as we speak, with our entire organization. So they're job shadowing our entire department this whole week, just because they took the time to come over, and then there was follow-up.
Yeah.
So I think you can grow your network, and you can grow it, but you won't grow it if you don't speak to people, if you don't
Yeah.
take the time to introduce yourself. And more importantly, it's not about you telling them about you. It's really more about you finding out who they are. And then you saying, look, I would love to learn more about, you know, what you do. Would it be okay if I, you know, I think now LinkedIn, or can I get your email, what have you? Just figure out how to stay connected.
Bronwyn, who's also on our board, says the networking is just the appetizer. The event, the networking, that first connection is literally just the appetizer. The follow-up and the continued event, like that's the real meal that you're getting ready for. So I love what you said there. We still have a bunch of Q&A. I'm going to do one more and then we'll wrap up because I know we're pretty close to time. When looking to become involved with niche communities within the sports industry and basketball, what are the best ways to get your foot in the door and connect with the right people?
As far as getting into basketball?
In these niche
Uh,
communities, especially in sports, it can be really
yeah.
hard to break through those barriers. How do you get in?
Well, you know, there's a couple of ways you get in. One, you know, I got in through continuing to foster, and this ties back to the first question, right? I continue to foster those relationships that I had in college. I continued to make sure that, you know, I was appearing in the spaces where there would be opportunities. For instance, if you wanted to get into coaching, then there are programs out there through the NCAA, the WBCA, that are Who Wants to Be a Coach. Start doing those things. When you've got head coaches that are mentoring and looking for up and coming assistant coaches, make sure your name is constantly being floated, but you might have to volunteer. I think we think that everything's just going to come to us. No, you're gonna have to go get it. You're gonna have to make the initiative and maybe invest in how do I get myself in the door. With us here, really it's about once those jobs are posted, and again, having that strong resume, but also making sure that you have people on that resume that are on your reference that aren't afraid and who will pick up the phone and call and say, look, can I get a meeting with you? I want to talk to you about this candidate that you could consider. That goes a long way, having, because if I got a phone call today from another WBA team and they said, hey, I really want you to look at this applicant, I'm going to do it because I have so you got to find, who can be an internal champion for you as well. And that could be somebody else in another department that could say, hey, I met this person. I think they would be great. Please give them a look. At least they're giving you a look, because if you don't take your shot, how are you ever going to know if you're going to make it or not? So I totally 100 believe that the power of going and making those contacts and introducing yourself, and you don't have to hound people. Like I like it when there's professional check-ins, right? Not like every single hour on the hour because you're trying to be persistent. No, there's ways to be professionally persistent. So understanding that as well as you're going through this journey. So
yeah, and if you don't have those big names on your resume, or you don't have those people in your network, I think it goes back to what you said, Nikki, is like, you've got to start doing something and finding those people, whether it's alumni from your university, who I can guarantee would want to reach out and help you, whether it's other student athletes that are doing things. Like, those connection points are going to matter. And like, maybe not today, but in 5 years, 10 years, et cetera. So I love that. For anyone on the call, if you haven't created an HCA profile and you are a current and former collegiate female athlete, definitely do it. www.joinher.com. Super easy. If you have a resume, literally takes less than 30 seconds. Here's a quick QR code if you need it. You can scan that or just go to joinher.com. But Nikki, seriously, thank you so much. You are a literal legend. I mean, whether it's doing something, the power of networking, and just showing that you're able to be successful and how you've done so are really just transcending through your career. And then lastly, how could we not forget finding a why that's bigger than yourself, right? If we can think of anything across your career, it's that why. But thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining.